Hello and welcome to Horizons. So this is the second Fancy Horizons that we've done, which is quite nice, isn't it? No expense spared again. All very exciting. My name's David as well, because we need to introduce ourselves, and we have...
And I'm Lindsay.
Cool, right. So for those that haven't been on Horizons before, it's probably useful just to go through what we're actually trying to achieve here. So the whole point of Horizons is to understand what's coming up in the next 12 months, what next 18 months, that's going to have a fundamental impact on whether it's media, marketing or advertising. So it's all about thinking about what's the changes in audience changes, trends, channel changes, what are the big people doing like Meta and Google that are going to affect your day-to-day. The other thing that we really want to kind of push with Horizons is all about brand you. So it's all about what can you get from this. So what we also want to do is encourage interactivity, because we're hopefully going to tell you about all of these new and exciting things that are coming up that are going to affect you, which should make you the most interesting person in your office by far. So to make sure you are that most interesting person, and when we're looking at the Q&A later, we see you as a very interesting and intelligent person, we want to really encourage interaction. So we've got 3 polls, not as many as last time. We've got 3 kind of focused in polls, actually 4, one right at the very end. And we've got a Q&A open from now all the way through to the end. And we're going to touch on the questions at the end to incentivize the interaction. As last time, no expenses spared. We've got this. We've been in makeup since 6 a.m. We've also got $250 of flight vouchers to give away, so you can travel anywhere in the world on us.
Not really anywhere in the world.
As far as $250 takes you. So, but to win that $250, you have to be part of the game. So the people who interact the most, whether that's Q&A and through the polls, will stand a larger chance to win the cash. This is what we're going to talk through today. So we've got WhatsApp. We've got quite a lot to talk about WhatsApp. And we did tee this up on the last Horizon, say we're going to talk about WhatsApp. And it's a really, really interesting space at the moment. So that's going to be fun and exciting. We've got paid search, which is always fun and exciting. And the rise of a phrase of zero-click searches that you're going to hear more and more of as AI is taken over that. So we're going to talk quite a lot about that. We've got LinkedIn, because why not? We like a bit of LinkedIn, and actually LinkedIn's going to be quite interesting about how it's evolving. So it's kind of about the evolution of LinkedIn as well. And finally, we've got absolute craziness about what's possible in AI. Now, as you can see from today's agenda, it's very digitally focused. I feel the last few Horizons, we've actually had more of a skew towards out of home or TV, connected TV. But there's so much going on in the world of digital at the moment, which we gave it all of our attention, which is really, really nice for us. But before we crack into this, if we move on to the next slide, we're actually going to kick off with some recaps as well. So one of the recaps we wanted to touch on, because it affects probably 99% of all of our clients, is Meta. So 3 months ago in our last Horizons, we talked about Meta, and we talked about actually the approach they're taking is quite refreshing and interesting in terms of focusing on incremental gain rather than that last click conversion. Some of the bits that we discussed last time was actually our expectation is your cost per acquisition is probably going to go up, and your CPCs may go up because you're going after a harder to get audience, but that should be offset hopefully quite dramatically by the amount of revenue that you're actually making from that. And we've got some stats on that actually. So I'll quickly tee up some stats and you can go into what all of this stuff means. So in terms of what we've been testing over the last few months for our clients on Meta using the incremental attribution, is we've seen actually all of them be positive. I think it's anywhere between 12% and 24% additional cash in the bank, which is really, really cool. And we did see higher CPCs and higher CPAs, but it massively offset itself.
I mean, it's quite exciting that it's only been 3 months. It feels like it was like not very long ago at all that we started to even talk about it, but to have such good results from a range of different clients. So for those of you who already work with us, we will be talking to you about rolling it out more. I think a big part of what we're seeing with it, again, we've talked about this a fair bit, that the targeting capabilities within Meta are being reduced more and more, and we're seeing that that's had a really big shift, particularly kind of coming into kind of January next year. They're deleting a whole load of specific audiences, but actually that shouldn't be something that we should be worrying about, because what they're doing is they're just rolling up those really niche audiences that we maybe have all got a bit used to using, but probably aren't actually that accurate, and there's a huge amount of overlap on it. So by leaning more into the broader audiences and really just thinking about creative as your way to diversify, it's going to really work that incremental part so much more, because if you're always going for those really niche audiences, you're not going to be finding people that you didn't expect to find. And that's what we found with those incremental campaigns, is they've genuinely got in new people rather than just those who are already kind of warm to us. And something else that we're seeing happen more and more, if you've got lots of different audiences, is that we're hitting caps on how many ads we're allowed to be running anytime. So that's not to limit the creative, it's to limit how many audiences you have running. So there's definitely going to be a shift in kind of comfort of how Meta looks and how you run the activity, and that you might not have quite so hand-picked audiences, but you still have some in there and you still have the structure to it, but the creative variation is going to become more and more important. And that doesn't mean lots of different videos being made. It's maybe just different text overlays or different kind of ends to it, or kind of introductions to it, or copy around it, and kind of framing of it. It's just different ways of showing it. There's also been some recent stats have come out of Meta about frequency advice as well. So an ad variant being seen more than 4 times really dramatically drops the efficiency of that. So that again, from personal experience, that would make sense, because if you're seeing on Meta, you're seeing so many of the same things. You see the same ad 4 times, that's quite a lot. You wouldn't want to see the same post that many times. So I think that really helps kind of enforce why you should be thinking about
so
different
I guess
variations.
It's basically the creative side of things needs to work out a way to be much more efficient in delivering more and more assets, right? Because you'll end up getting stuck or caught between 2 bits, where you've either got a creative team that can generate assets, look at data, understand that these things work, let's create more variants of that, or you're going to fall behind because you haven't got enough assets and you're hitting your frequency caps and you're doing that, or you have to just give it up, give AI over to Meta, give Meta that kind of access to do what it wants. So really, it's a call to arms for the creative side of things, that actually it's about being quicker, more creative, testing, get involved in the data, and really kind of getting amongst it.
And having those different variations. Obviously, the AI side of Meta is still horrific. And what they're kind of, when they're adding their own variations, it's not good enough, but it's going to be getting better. But in the kind of real way of doing it, there are massive amounts of expertise in how to tell a story. So tell a story more in different ways, and cut it in slightly different ways, or different faces, different voices.
Absolutely. So that's Meta. So lots of changes in Meta, and positive changes so far, which is good. So if we move on to PMAX, Performance Max. So this one's been quite interesting. We've been talking about changes in PMAX since about October, when they started to really ramp it up. I think since we talked about this slide 3 months ago, things have fundamentally changed. When we talked about this slide, one of the big things we talked about was 2 things really. One, actually in a positive light, Google are actually being more transparent about where the ads are being shown, even down to now, which we were talking about before you went on holiday a couple of weeks ago, was down to a keyword level, down to the actual videos that people are watching on YouTube and things like that. So much more transparent.
And the funnel of which assets people are seeing before they then become a conversion. So you actually can see the value of putting in the video assets, the static assets, and how that actually pushes people along to then converting.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the other side is that, from what I think we've probably got, data, more data, is that Google wants more of your data, right? It wants the CRM data uploads. It wants to be looking at all of these things. So it's interesting how far that's moved in 3 months of the data, as we said, that we've seen to that kind of granular level on PMAX. And I think PMAX is an interesting one because the performance is really, really good, and it's really stepped up over the last 6 months or so. And I think there's more tightening going on, but you do need to make sure you're not getting dross kind of conversions through.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. It's so good, the performance, that makes it a little bit the trust is definitely a problem, I think, because it is too good to be true. However, the too good to be true was definitely something that I was also really worried about before, and I would always be quite cautious about how much you'd put into it, because it just felt too good. However, because we've now got that granular keyword data, what it's showing is, although you might have had kind of negative terms in there for brand, the long tail variants that it's picking up of those kind of real in-market audiences and the brand terms, it's giving us more data than you get from a search query report. And actually the quality of those keywords that are driving the PMAX conversions, for all the ones that we've looked into, is actually really, really high quality relevant traffic. So that trust has definitely been increased because we've got that visibility, which means that we should be pushing more in. And I think a lot of the time, like the ROIs that we're seeing on it is so much higher than Meta, but we're often spending like 5 times more in Meta because we trust that more. So I think now is a time to push a bit more and just see what those
and see the effect on the quality of conversions too.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that looking ahead, search is better when you're adding images to it. So they're kind of like really recommending that you put more assets in. And if you kind of get those two things of search having images and PMAX having images, it's all going to be one thing. So I think there's going to be real conversations around what is the structure of your Google activity. Where do you want to have the real kind of control over which keywords you're trying to appear for versus where you're allowing that broad, and like, is there even a role for broad match? Probably not. PMAX is probably your broad match and phrase match now. And even when you have we've talked about this loads with clients about you put a keyword in, even on exact match, and you're not really appearing for that anyway.
Yeah,
so,
it's exact-ish nowadays, isn't it? So,
so I think it is going to be an interesting kind of dynamic, and where we have quite a few clients where we're kind of different products we might be pushing, and when you use PMAX versus when you're using search, and how much you actually kind of not cannibalizing, but just doing the same thing in different places. Is your data as clean, or is it as easy to make decisions when actually you're potentially running the same campaign in 5 different places because of the way that it works? So that's, I think, a big thought moving ahead about how to structure it best.
Making sure it's planned out properly.
Yeah.
So that's the recap of what we talked about 3 months ago, and showing that we're like the oracles of media. But if we move on to the next kind of forecast that we've kind of got going on, WhatsApp. So we teed this up last time.
What's happened since last time I went through this? So we brought this one up last time because I think it was my son who was like using WhatsApp as a way to get kind of news from Formula One, actually, was what he's really into. So from like the Formula One teams and things, and that was where he was, because he's not allowed on social media yet, but he has WhatsApp. And actually we were then looking at other kind of channels in there and how they work. And it really has kind of, again, pushed on a lot in the last 3 months of the way that communities are building within WhatsApp and those channels. I mean, WhatsApp themselves, I'm getting a lot more alerts from WhatsApp with updates coming through. So it's being much more of a kind of push environment, which is, again, another thing to think about. I know probably one of the biggest frustrations from client side is there's another new channel to manage and another new place to think about how do you moderate and create content in there, and what do you prioritize? Do you just sack off TikTok completely and do WhatsApp now? Like, that's going to be probably conversations that are going to be important to have about where you get the most quality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's 2 things that we wanted to touch on when it comes to WhatsApp. So how can we use this to make money, which is kind of the whole point. So if we think about what Meta's doing from a commerce point of view, so this is quite interesting. So I actually got more and more information of this, actually, rather than looking on the Meta's website at case studies and stuff. It was actually via the other way. I was actually looking at the business API, as you do, of how Meta connects into from that type of thing. But it was really interesting, and you kind of go down these rabbit holes, and all of the really API. What do you do on a Saturday night? Anyway, so going down into the kind of the rabbit hole of WhatsApp API connections, it was really interesting. I found out some really kind of interesting stuff. A lot of it was coming out of Asia. I was doing some crazy stuff. So some of the stuff that really kind of caught my eye was Tata Click, which is an Indian lifestyle fashion kind of retailer. They're doing loads of stuff through WhatsApp, making loads of money. So when they've got kind of big sales or flash sales coming up, they do broadcast through WhatsApp. Then they make $500,000 straight off the bat, first day when it goes. The engagement rates are like late 50s, 57, 58%, which is basically what, from a CRM point of view, you'd only dream about on something like email. So it's doing absolutely crazy numbers. They're doing a lot on cart abandonment, which we'll touch on in a sec as well. The other one, which is probably random, again, down another rabbit hole of looking at the transportation system in Delhi, buses specifically in Delhi. And they use WhatsApp, and they got the business API for WhatsApp in Delhi. And essentially, apparently getting a bus in Delhi is obviously a mental experience, as you would probably imagine. And lots of, like, going from A to B is probably going via Z, Y, and W first, right? So it's really, really complicated. So what they've done is you just WhatsApp message the Delhi bus people and say, this is where I want to go. It pings, say this is how much it is. You pay it through WhatsApp. They send you a QR code. You go on a bus with a QR code, done.
Much easier.
I mean, it's not exactly London tappy tap with your phone, but you know, but I thought that was really, really cool. So yeah, Delhi bus system.
So it's the same with restaurants, isn't it? Like a lot of restaurants are kind of using it as a way to confirm bookings or to talk about things. If you want to kind of talk about if you've got any like dietary requirements, it's a really good way of communicating with that. And I think it's then again when we're talking about like how do you even think about expanding out to it as a another channel where it sits. It's definitely more in the CRM side of things. Like the cart abandonment is really interesting. Like that's where Skull Candy have been using it to kind of stop, people who have started the journey, not completed it. And they've seen a 50-60% reduction in people abandoning their carts. That's massive.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because it's just a way of like much more cut through from people. But I think it's definitely a first mover advantage, those numbers. I wouldn't say that that's going to be the long-term numbers that you get from it because it's cleaner as an environment right now. If you think like how many unread emails you might have because you get so much, and I'm not going to say how many unread emails I might have, but my WhatsApp, I wouldn't want to leave things unread. I don't like the little green thingy, so I'd be much more likely to read it. If I'm getting loads sent to me, then I don't know, I'd probably become a bit more wallpaper with it.
I suppose it's the same as all advertising or any marketing, right? It's the personalization and the value you're going to get. You need to make sure but even if as a brand you're doing that and you're doing it really, really well, all it takes is the 3 or 4 other ones that is the reason ad blockers exist, right? Spamming.
I don't know if you can see if people have archived you. Can you see that if it's your channel? Do you see who've... Because that would be quite interesting if you can see.
That'd be an interesting start. Yeah. I'll have a look at the business API, see what it says.
See.
So making money is one way to do it. But the other way, moving on to the next one, is actually more around the connectivity of the whole thing. Because it's personalised, it feels more one-to-one, feels like you're part of something. So it's that kind of community vibe, which is quite interesting. And there's a couple of examples, actually, like moving back into Europe is, first of all, so the men's wear clothing brand in the UK, they actually created a community on WhatsApp that essentially are their super users, really. And that's where they go with their sales first. The engagement rates, again, off the scale, doing really, really well, making lots of money. In fact, from a cash point of view, they managed to raise £1 million to essentially fund them. So they went on a crowdfunding thing and made £1 million from doing WhatsApp communities. So we should be all over that as a company.
We should definitely do that.
Pure Gyms is another one. So again, it's kind of like a purer, cleaner at this stage. Who knows what it's going to be like next year? Like a Facebook group, but with kind of more engagement, more interaction. So with Pure Gym, it's not just the gym, it's specific. So it might be a specific type of yoga or Pilates, or it could be specifically the free weights kind of group that you want to be in. So it's building all of these communities up where you know you're going to get really, really high engagement. And if you do want to push anything to them, it can be really personalized, authentic and specific.
I think that push thing is quite key, because that is what they're kind of being used for a lot more, is that pushing out of things from the brand channel perspective. So Jellycat, comparing TikTok to their WhatsApp group, just to see, again, if you were making that decision of where do you put the effort in, because you've always got to prioritize what you're going to do. Their TikTok channel's got like 2 million followers. Their WhatsApp is about 500,000, which is pretty good considering how new that is. The type of content they're putting on both channels is completely different. So TikTok's much more polished, much higher, production values, whereas on WhatsApp, they're literally putting a photo of a product and then making every single one as a poll, either a poll or just like giving emojis to 4 different products and getting people to respond. If they're doing like the emoji type one, they're getting the same level of engagements as they're getting on TikTok for their posts. So that kind of quality and high volume of engagements is absolutely there, but they're getting really quick feedback on the products that people are actually liking and which ones will get momentum. So much faster kind of user research.
And people feel more part of it, right? So you're more likely to buy because you feel more part of the team.
And even like kind of us talking about this, I then realised that I'm in communities on WhatsApp and hadn't really kind of like put the two together. But from a work perspective, so for me, it's by far a much better version of Twitter, where you'd maybe have used Twitter in the past for kind of, industry insight and knowledge. Because with the WhatsApp groups, you've been invited and so they're private. People are really open and talk about stuff that is private and maybe like, insider kind of knowledge from companies and things, because it's a kind of a safe space and lots of knowledge sharing is happening in there and it's a much richer environment. So actually, from a community perspective, I find it really, really good.
That's exactly where innovation is going to come from, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Like and people like bouncing ideas off and actually finding
stuff.
new connections within there. Because like some of the groups, they're quite big. There's quite a lot of 150, 200 people, whatever. I don't know who all they are, but actually, if I need something, you can put it in there and you'll get a recommendation.
Yeah.
And start finding new connections, which is
we've won new business off WhatsApp groups.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
We got recommended through WhatsApp groups. We should do that. Cool. Anyway, that's enough on WhatsApp because we can move on. So if we move on to the wonderful world of Google. So this is a slight recap of what we talked about 3 months ago. So what we can see on the screen, there you go, there, is basically a video recording of someone typing in a search and getting obviously the AI generative result up. But this is what we talked about last time in terms of the paid search integration within that kind of Google request, Gemini request. So this one's quite an interesting one because, as I said up front, this is where the phrase zero-click searches is going to on the rise because there's some crazy stats on this, right? So what a zero-click search means is that someone searched for something, they've read the AI Gemini output, and then they've thought, cool, that's all I need. And they don't click on anything. So what obviously that means is that no one's clicking on ads, which means that actually Google, the CPCs are going to go up because that supply has kind of gone down. But it also means that organically, less people are going to go to your site organically because people aren't clicking. They're getting the information they need straight off the bat, which means your organic traffic's dropping, which means you're probably piling more money into paid to try and prop that up. But what you're doing is you're inflating an already inflationary market. And some of the crazy stats that we've seen, something like anything between 60 to 80% of informational searches are zero clicks. So up to 8 out of 10 people searching for something, information, don't click on anything, whether it's an ad or organic listing, don't click.
Is that a Google stat or is that an all search stat?
No, these ones come out of things like SEMrush and stuff like that.
So that includes like people using Chatty?
No, this is based on actual search platform, which is, going to be Google.
Yeah, because that number's not even accurate then.
Yeah, because you've got the whole world of people using ChatGPT and stuff like that.
And all the other variants that are coming out as well. So there's like specific niches of AI searches with like the Cody type ones. Is it Find?
Yeah.
And Claude, which is like more about kind of really high quality content writing. Perplexity, which is more about like white papers, research. There's like even kind of niches within those ones, and they're going to be zero click searches as well. So obviously we've talked again quite a lot about the importance of AIEO. Good old McDonald.
AIEO.
It's something that we are just looking at, like, what's the best tech that we can find that actually helps you see what your visibility is across AI, so that you can start making a good plan from an organic perspective, because you need to be coming up in that zero-click search result in some way.
And it's really difficult to track at the moment. I've noticed lately, because we were talking about this a few weeks ago, and even a few weeks ago, a lot of the time it wasn't happening, but I've now noticed actually a lot more when you're clicking out from ChatGPT, it comes up in your UTM as source equals ChatGPT, which wasn't happening a few weeks ago as much. So even that's kind of changing fundamentally.
Well, there was some stats that Sykes Cottages, something like 70% of their traffic came from ChatGPT. That's mad. Huge amount of shift, because it's that kind of recommendation engine, really, that shift there. But I think it's interesting as well when you talk about the CPCs going up and things changing. But actually, if 80% of people are using that for their first stage, they're going to be much, much more qualified. Yeah. So the conversion rate is actually going up as well. So you may not be competing from a paid perspective in informational searches, but your transactional phrases are going to be more important.
Which is why it's
see that as much.
Really important to get the IAEO, GEO bit really, really kind of solid, because that's essentially your top middle funnel stuff when it kind of goes through. So actually with all of the kind of conversion optimization and the smart bidding that you can now do, obviously that's driving up CPCs, but that should offset itself, similar to what we're talking about Meta, offsets itself in terms of the quality as well. But it's definitely something to look out for in terms of that drop in organic, the increase in CPCs, but actually what you can do, you're not going to stop this. So what you can do to adapt to make it work.
And it's exciting, really, because it just means more qualified people and more like getting that information right. I think we did talk last time about the quality of the information in that zero-click space and how inaccurate it still is.
Yeah.
So again, that kind of leads into making sure that you're helping inform it as much as possible.
Yeah. So the big thing is get your IEO to get that straight, and then understand what you're going to do about the fluctuations in CPC and making sure it's offset for quality.
And I quite like, especially with the fact there's going to be lots more coming in. It's no different to when Google came and took from Lycos,
Yahoo, the dog. Lycos was the dog, wasn't it? Black Labrador.
Because it was just so much better. It's like these other ones are so much better at what they do. So it's just going to adapt. And if you're kind of in the research space or that quality, especially like the B2B side of things, like the quality of information, well, then Perplexity is where you want to be appearing, because that's going to be the right kind of audience for you more. So it's actually not
high quality as well.
Exactly.
High quality.
So it's going to start changing that. And we talked before about like Reddit and how that's benefiting quite a lot. And it is, we've been exploring quite a bit the advertising side, because that's definitely improving on Reddit.
I mean, to be fair, we've been doing Reddit for about 10 years.
Yeah, but it's been rubbish the entire time.
Yeah.
They have now got humans, but it's probably still 90% rubbish, and that they're just not there yet, but that's speeding up, and they will be doing more. But
and they're also getting an injection of cash from like the likes of OpenAI because they're using them for all of their learning, so they're getting pumped for loads of money.
Yeah,
so they've got more money to make all of this stuff work as well. Yeah,
exactly. And Chatty's launching with ads as well, so that's starting to be tested,
which we also predicted as well.
So it's going to be the diversification is coming, and it's good because it gives us a bit of mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about the evolution of things, we can move on to the wonderful world of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, this is an interesting one. So to give you the kind of, I guess, timeline of what we're about to talk about. So it's still kind of in beta, right? So I think it was probably about last year, LinkedIn launched what they at the time called Wire, and now they've rebranded into Brand Link. So essentially what that is they're making a massive play into video, which we've known for about a year anyway. That's all they talk about is video. But what this is actually doing pre-rolls before the likes of content from Bloomberg or leading kind of thought leaders. So that kind of top 1% echelon within LinkedIn. And you could actually buy a pre-roll before their content. As you can see here, actually, so LinkedIn are actually showing you how to skip an ad. So I'm not sure why they would do that, but basically you've just skipped the ad.
People are pretty good at knowing how to skip ads.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what they're doing now is they're actually rolling this out. So not only just the top 4 or 5 players on LinkedIn, it's actually rolling out to actually monetizing that kind of influencer on LinkedIn. So as an influencer, you can now lock into this and actually have pre-rolls before your content. And you also get a cut of it as well, which is quite interesting. So it's kind of like a rev share. LinkedIn are giving you a cut of the advertising revenue.
It's basically a YouTube model,
yeah,
which is good because YouTube have obviously been reducing how much we can use it in a way. And this is, again, thinking about kind of the right environments for the right audiences. Having that same model works well and makes sense because you've got more chance of just having that kind of affinity with the right kind of environment. So rather than just being in LinkedIn and kind of as part of the feed that people might scroll past, you've got a much greater chance of getting people to pause.
And the other thing I'd say about LinkedIn as well is that this isn't just a B2B channel. Whether you're selling theatre tickets, it doesn't even have to be the box or the VIP, right? It's just people doing their jobs, right? So you're getting people that are probably in the kind of higher income brackets, and just not having blue in your ads will make you stand out, right? So just not being a B2B brand with blue in their ads, you will get cut through on LinkedIn. So I think it could be an interesting one for a range of things. And just to tee up, just if we move on to the next slide, just got a few bits about how to create ads. There's nothing different about how to create a LinkedIn ad versus any other ad, right? It's that authenticity, making sure you get your kind of your specs right, 9x16 and things like that. Interestingly, LinkedIn said, keep it short, keep it to 2 minutes or less. Is 2 minutes short? 2 minutes seems a long time.
For people who have got a lot to say about things, so 2 minutes, we've got a lot to say.
Yeah. This content was only supposed to last 5 minutes, and here we are. But yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff in terms of how we can showcase like that kind of the authentic point of view and kind of putting that across. So I think it's not being afraid of doing LinkedIn really, regardless of the sector. It's making sure you get your targeting right and your audience right, which is where we come in.
Again, it's just creative testing with it. So on the previous slide where it's got the video of the kind of the thought leader talking, that's very natural, very unpolished, kind of face to camera. And so if you're putting your ad on top of that, do you want to be more of an obvious ad? Or do you want to be another face to camera talking like I don't know what's going to be the best. So we do see good engagement with the more organic kind of face to camera type stuff, but we also do see better conversion from the more polished side. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of testing I think to be done there of like in this environment, what is the best mix? Because we don't tend to see that kind of like more organic type stuff works well on YouTube. So, and if this is a similar model, we see that more ad type content works better.
Has to have that contrast.
Yeah, exactly. To show that you're not them and that you're a kind of an advert in front of it. So I think that's like maybe there's different roles for the different type of content you create and the different placements.
Yeah. Which then comes back to the data, the testing and the creativity, that kind of feeding the data into the creative team to run with stuff and make amazing things. That's it on LinkedIn. Now we've got half an hour, but this might go on because this is crazy stuff. Right. So I don't think we're ever going to do Horizons without talking about AI. I just love it. So this wasn't the last Horizons. This was like February's Horizons. I think we did this one where we talked about the rise of AI influencers and how Meta has studios to help you create your own and so on and so forth. So we talked about this a while ago, but I think it's worth bringing this up again because the speed of change is absolutely phenomenal. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is, if we move on to the next slide, is actually the creation of advertise and things like that. So the examples we got here on the screen. So this is H&M's digital twins. So these two people here are actually AI clones. So they're actually based on real people, real models, but they're AI versions of it. Now, this is really interesting. So this is where it kind of gets into rights and how does it work ethically and things like, because let's like cut to chase, right? The ethics on this are interesting, right? So a lot of the times when people are coming out with AI clones and not even clones, but even AI creations, a lot of the argument is down to diversity. But there was no diversity. I think the big controversy was, I think someone made an influencer that was supposed to be somewhere in Africa, sort of from Africa, but it was basically some white guy in the US actually creating. So there's no diversity in that, right?
Yeah.
So you've kind of got all of this stuff. But this is a really interesting model. And there are models as well. But essentially, these models here, H&M created their digital twins, but they actually own the rights to them. So H&M can use them wherever they see fit. These guys obviously can sign off on that and they get commission and they get paid for the use of their AI models. But actually, if they want to use not H&M, they want to use their kind of digital twins elsewhere, they can, and they get paid for that as well. And I think the model, I don't think it's either one of these models, but I think the best quote from one of the models was, "She's like me, except without the jet lag," because they don't have to travel anywhere now. So that kind of interesting bit about how the commercials work for all of this, how the ethics work and all of this, is only just beginning the craziness of this.
But it's also being rolled out more. So Meta, TikTok, Snapchat, they're all making it that it's going to become something that we can all create. It's not just something that H&M can do with a model at kind of a professional level.
Huge amounts of money, yeah.
It's actually something that we can do as individuals, which is, I think, again, that the ethics side, but also like the privacy thing. I think it's potentially a really good thing because, especially when you think about the future, like children and what they're kind of, how hard it has been for like people who are in the social world now. But actually, if they've got an AI twin version of themselves that they're putting out as still their personality and their opinions, but it doesn't actually look like them in some way. It's a bit more private. They don't actually have to give them away.
This is exactly the plot of Enter Player One.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
yeah,
that just suddenly occurred to me.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing, but people don't like doing podcasts and webinars, so
no,
I could get a digital twin to do this.
Exactly, we can do all of this.
Much better.
Get the digital twin, whack it on LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever.
But I do think a lot of people would be a lot more comfortable with that because they don't want to be like themselves.
Yeah, and they don't even have to look like themselves, which is the Enter Player One thing that occurred to me.
Yeah, so, but it is, again, a big shift, but not something that is going to change. It's definitely going to continue being, because it's becoming so accessible. I think it's just going to shift, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Which is also quite interesting from a creative point of view as well, because we were talking about this at lunch a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
How does it work in terms of creating? So whether it's creating a theatre play, creating music, how do the rights, and obviously all of the rights and chaos that's going on with that, even at the moment, is quite interesting, or whether it's going to actually split between, you can buy a loaf of bread in the co-op, or you can go buy your artisan one that's handmade from the place down the road for a bit more. So is it a split pricing model that starts to happen with all of this kind of stuff happening? But we're literally just on the tip of the iceberg of it at the moment. It's quite interesting
as well, even on I don't know if everyone else's summer has been completely K-pop demon hunted as mine, probably, I suspect. But I was saying something yesterday where I was saying about the fact that it's going to potentially be live action, and the comments were just like, don't ruin it, don't make it live action, we just want the animation. Again, back to that kind of point that actually real humans aren't necessarily what everyone wants all the time. Actually, it's the quality, the creativity and the story the talent behind that is not the human faces, but it's everything behind that is all still humans. So it's like actually doesn't take away from creativity.
So by the end of this, we're going to advertise of ourselves, pumping it out on WhatsApp and LinkedIn like no one's business. It's going to be great. Right, so if we move on to the wonderful world of AI, to more AI, now this is just madness. So these people here are just pure AI, right? They're all pure AI. So you have to I kind of left this last cut in because it kind of freaky. Anyway, but like these are all AI. So you basically build your AI. They look like normal human beings to a degree, some better than others, but this is only going to get better. You do your basic prompts, teach them about the products, and they can essentially go on live streaming and sell your product 24/7. Some of the quotes that are coming out of Asia on this is that, say, for example, Brothers Printer, I think, was one of the kind of pioneers on all of this stuff, making lots of money 24/7 on selling their printers and such by getting AI to kind of sell it all for them. Their whole kind of ways of working have changed, where they wake up in the morning and see how much money has their AI bot sold for them overnight, because there's no sleep, there's no kind of getting horses and things like that, because people need water and blah, blah, blah.
No water.
It just goes on and on and on and on. It's like relentless.
It's just absolute tripe though, isn't it, that they're talking about? It's like
it will be, but it may. But that's the interesting. Yeah, but that's the interesting thing, right? So they can show that actually, to give a ray of light to humankind, is that I think humans get the amount of money, the revenue or the ROAS is something like 3, 4, 5 times better using humans, but they can only work for 5-6 hours a day, and you have to pay them. Whereas these guys work 24/7, and you've already made them. What are you going to do? Juggle it, right? But it's absolutely crazy. Like the actual speed of change that's going through all of these things is actually absolutely crazy right now.
It's quite scary because it's changing so much. But it's more just thinking about how do you make the most of it in a way that's ethically kind of sound for you and that it fits with your brand. I think that's a big part of what the conversation should be around and how that starts to work, because it's not going anywhere and your competitors will be using that efficiency more in some way. So how do you find a way that fits ethically? Yeah,
which is exactly, I think, for everyone here, like watching this morning and be watching some replays and stuff, is that, what does this mean for you guys really? Like, how are you going to set it out so it works for you? Because as you said, it's not going anywhere. It's just what you can do, how you're going to play this, and what's your position on it.
I think, and obviously on the poll, for those who are kind of filling it in, the biggest answer is it is around that kind of trust of not damaging the brand. And obviously we're not going to have the answer to that now, and that's something that is going to continue to be talked about. But even like simple things, I think, where you're putting, people have had chatbots on their websites for so long in terms of kind of like customer service, like quick answers, FAQ type stuff. And it is a bit rubbish and it is a bit clunky and the user experience isn't great. This is a better way of doing that because it's going to be smarter. It's going to be able to answer those questions more. So if that means it's a better user experience for people and feels like it's building more of a connection, and, simple things like accessibility will be so much better because you could have every single language from it. So absolutely. It can be much, much easier. So that's not damage to your brand at all. That's a really good thing. If you're kind of over and transparent about what you're doing, that's not damaging to the brand. I think is if you're pretending that they're real people and you're doing it to the detriment of real people, like, the rights side of things, that's the damaging part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing about this isn't just on a loop. I mean, this is, but but this isn't like you film something, you just 20 minutes and you loop it. They're essentially interacting with people, commenting as well, and they can welcome people to the chat and doing all of those things. It's so real. It's like you're watching them, and some of them you're watching, and every now and then you might see a little glitch just to bring you back into reality, because it's so, and the hyper-realism of it's just going to just be crazy in the next 12 months as well. So it's something to look out for. It's like you can't ignore it, so what you can do about it.
I think there is the flip side, is if you don't have something that is as intuitive and as easy to engage with than the market and what people expect, you're going to look really dated.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that kind of like, people will expect a customer service question on your website to be someone they can converse with a lot more than just being sent links to kind of preset FAQs. That's going to be really frustrating when they know the technology and the capabilities are there to be much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that personalization, the community serving type stuff, the customer service, all those things are going to be huge.
Thinking about that is that actually going back to what we were talking about with like the incremental stuff with Meta and WhatsApp. I think that's also part of it, of what's that user journey that you want people to go on. Because actually with this kind of capabilities, cart abandonment, all that kind of sales things, actually would that be a better journey than your website from your ads? Are you better off sending people through to a conversation with someone who can guide them through tickets or what's the best seats for them, or what's the days, or restaurants in the area they could go to, like making a personalized plan for their size of family or age or whatever it might be. Like you could actually create a really good experience.
Yeah, because also, we've been talking about this for years, but it's not that far off now where you're going to have your own digital AI personal assistant anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That does a lot of these things with you, and they'll integrate with these ones probably through the Meta Business API. for WhatsApp. And then they go from there.
Everyone will be like, Google Meta, chat agent, Meta.
Yeah. If we move on to the next one, just another bit on the whole wonderful world of artificial intelligence. Now this, because it's basically going to flip the whole manufacturing process potentially. So this is based on Alibaba, right? So again, I found this going down a rabbit hole as well. This is a research paper that some researchers and scientists at Alibaba, as in like the Asian kind of version of Amazon, I guess. But yeah, so they put together a research study which they've actually now put into practice. So the traditional way things we can see is row A, where we look at the traditional e-commerce. So you design, you then make it, then you take some photos, you do your sales and marketing, and then you hopefully sell it. Whereas actually what they're doing is they're flipping it. It's like, what's the point of making something that no one may not buy? So what they're actually doing is they're putting in the details again into AI to say, look, I want to make this. This is the color, this is the texture, this is the fabric, all of those type of things. And it will generate kind of realistic images, videos, text, do all of the sales and marketing around it. Then you go onto Alibaba, people try to buy that product, but they'll only make it if enough people want it. So actually the manufacturing now is that they've done all of the kind of the AI to get what people actually want. Then people buy it and then you actually make it. So that's quite interesting in terms of flipping the whole process kind of over onto its head. But it's also quite interesting from a creativity point of view, because at what point in this are people doing the creative bit, or are people just now buying what AI wants them to buy?
Maybe where it's the actual initial brief.
But then it just becomes the data, doesn't it? It's like what fabric or what people running with, what are kind of consumers wanting. Let's just make more of that.
There's also like creativity doesn't come from asking people what they want, because most people aren't creative.
Yeah. So this is what this does, right?
Yeah.
It says you can have this.
Exactly. But if you think about proper creative people, they come up with the stuff, and you're not going to come up with stuff if it's just to choose. Like, you still need the image in the first place to then choose stuff.
Yeah.
So whatever kind of art form it's going to be in, you still need the creativity in the first place.
Potentially. It'd be interesting to see how
most people aren't a conformist, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they would just like what other people are liking or seeing around them. And then you need people who are different way of thinking to push for
So if you're that
new.
different way of thinking, you'd have to go your artisan route to get your stuff that you want, right?
Potentially.
Because everyone else would be doing the behavioural science of herding up with everyone else, which is quite cool. But it'd be interesting to see how Amazon kind of play out with all of these type of things as well. I mean, because Amazon kind of started to do this for a little bit, like years ago, where they'd look at all of their best sellers and then they'd make them themselves and sell it for half the price, right? And cut the market down and things like that. Whereas this is obviously taking it that extra step further.
And it's how long, what's that time frame if you're doing that anyway? Because it's not, how frustrated will people get if they keep saying they want something and then they can never get it?
Yeah. Not enough people. It's like
not enough
Groupon.
people. Yeah,
not enough people have jumped on it to make it worthwhile. Which actually, timing-wise, has brought us perfectly onto Q&A. That's how it works.
Well, and also the
polls as well, right?
The highest kind of volume was on the trust and the real conversions. And what is PMAX? It confuses me. Do you just want to answer that one because that's kind of a question?
PMAX is quite interesting. So you essentially go across the whole of the Google ecosystem. There's probably more control over the creative compared to something like Meta and ticking the AI boxes in Meta. But you essentially, like, even down to the AI search that we saw there with the products for cleaning carpets or whatever it was on that kind of video, that would be PMAX rather than, say, paid search straight off the bat. Obviously, you've got the display side of things. You've got YouTube, because you can't do YouTube now. So it's the plethora of essentially the Google stack. But as we talked about earlier on, and what we talked about a few months ago, is the really key thing now is that you can see the detail where your ads are being served, even more so compared to a search query report on Google as well. So
I think from a practical level, the way it works is that you have asset groups. So rather than having kind of a list of search terms, you create asset groups by category. So that would then be the videos, the images, the search copy, and then that gets spread out. I don't know how to prepare my business. That's the biggest answer on the 0-click searches, how to prepare your business for the drop in traffic, which I think is a very big concern for a lot of people, because especially it's not just paid search that's being affected with those higher CPCs and everything. Is obviously your organic is going to be dropping as well, which is a big shift.
That's where the review of what's your visibility like in those kind of AI generative searches where the AIEO type stuff comes in. We've obviously looking at quite a lot of tech in terms of that can give us that visibility in terms of, what is the percentage of visibility you're seeing if people are searching in ChatGPT or on Gemini into that first thing. So I think that's the first place to start, is what is your visibility in this? Because if that's really low, then that's going to be an issue, and you need to, what you're going to do from a AI, whatever, like the generic SEO, that type of thing, what are you going to do about that? Because that's going to become more and more upfront. And then you need to start looking at actually what's the value of the conversions you're actually getting. It's going to be really, really, really hard for clients and brands that are just looking at that last click sale and have done for years and years and years, because it's a fundamental shift to actually, you need to be thinking about it as a wider thing.
And it's the volume of traffic. So it's also that you should, as we're saying, you should be seeing an increase in the conversion from the traffic you're getting. So actually having the ability to kind of benchmark the quality of the traffic that's coming through now and how that changes over time as it's, as we said, kind of potentially a bit more pre-qualified from what it has been before, is probably a big thing that you should be focusing on, rather than just the number of clicks coming through and then your visibility in those environments.
Yeah.
And then on questions, question from Ollie: how to avoid WhatsApp ads feeling like spam when people may use it for messaging? I completely agree on that, because as I said, I think I have many thousands of unread emails from brands and some lists that I signed up to, and you just skim past them. I think it's going to be just a big part of it really, is that how relevant it is and how well you're using it. I think the cart abandonment side will probably feel less spammy, because that's obviously something that you've actively engaged with, and if you're giving something of value. If you are just using it to kind of constantly chuck out things, I think obviously it's the same with email. I think if you're putting so much out there, it will be spam. So the only way to not make it feel like spam is to not spam people.
And you also have to go above and beyond, right? Because of the 1 out of 10 that don't spam people, there'll be 9 out of 10 that are.
Yeah.
In fact, think about it, that's probably where the first mover advantage actually comes in, actually creates that advantage, because you create that value that people actually want to be part of that community in the first place, right? So when all of the spamminess happens in a year's time or whatever, you've already got that value. So they'll be blocking others and archiving others, whereas actually they're waiting for you because they know you've got that quality. Whereas if you started this in 12 months or 18 months time, then you have to prove that in a very harder, more chaotic kind of environment. So first mover advantage would be massive on that.
Obviously, it's kind of the channels side of thing versus the private communities as well, because obviously they sit in separate places. So that's probably a bit of the UX, which is probably quite good about WhatsApp, is that if you're kind of following certain brands, that might come in a different place versus in the communities. And then the other question about how B2B brands can use WhatsApp. I think for me, that goes back to the way that I'm in different business communities. I think there's a real value. A lot of B2B advertising is all about getting people to kind of help the sales team and to fuel their sales team with leads. But that idea of kind of gated content it doesn't really work anymore. People don't want to be signing up to give you their details for a white paper when they can get access to knowledge very, very easily.
Perplexity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. However, if you can invite them to join a community that's value to them with like-minded industry people, or, certain sectors, you've got, most brands will have a target list of businesses they're trying to get to. So if you were to invite them into a community that's private and a safe space, that could be a really good way of creating a really, really rich engagement of, the right kind of audiences that brings value to them. So I think that's a really interesting way of doing it, where you're actually facilitating their own kind of thought leadership together.
Yeah, absolutely. We probably should talk about our next event, which is all about AI. So essentially, Data and Science TBC, we're actually we're actually in talks with a few people to come to this, because it's going to be more of a interviewee type panel discussion type thing. We've got a poll on here to see how many people are interested in coming to that. Essentially, it's like, where do we go from here? Like, how do the ethics work from a branding point of view? What type of things should you be thinking about now? We'll hopefully have a couple of people from the brand side, and hopefully someone that's actually much more embedded into the AI world, to give that kind of advice on ethics and drive what you should be thinking about, what type of tech should we use, and what does this even mean for people, and give actually an open forum for people to ask questions about how do we even get started with this. I mean, we've been doing loads on AI over the last 6 months or so, and it's great. Like, from example, like with the amount of data that we've talked about throughout this, whether it's the creativity that's needed in Meta to get those ads and ad sets going, or whether it's actually the sheer amount of data we're now actually getting through the transparency of Google and Performance Max, that works with us really, really well, because we have huge amounts of AI agents scanning data at 3:00 in the morning, every morning, to give everyone a report that they can look through. So they don't have to, the human doesn't have to trawl through huge amounts of data. They're there to actually be inspired by it and like ask questions of it and drive forward with it. So I think there's huge amounts we could be doing with this from a data point of view, from a creativity point of view, but really it's not going to stop. So where are you going to be? So if everyone can answer the poll, this is the type of thing that people are interested in, find out more. And then we can arrange this one for a date TPC, probably mid-October.
It's just changed so much so quickly, and that curve is only getting
steeper
faster.
And steeper,
so we've kind of flipped and focused on this one for the next event. So it'd be great to get people's opinions, because it's the only best way for us to all keep evolving on it.
Because it's not going to stop. So giving everyone here an opportunity to ask actual experts and people from different places what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a in-person WhatsApp group. Nice. That's a brilliant way to finish. Anyway, thanks very much, everyone. Hope that was really useful. Any questions? Q&A?